Dubai is often viewed as one of the busiest areas in the world, from the Burj Khalifa and the Burj Al Arab to the Atlantis and the dozens of lavish malls, and teams like Dubai is one of the best places in the world to live. Combined. This was a no-income tax, and it's not surprising why so many rich individuals decide to retire in Dubai. With that being said though, Dubai often hawks the global spotlight when it comes to the UAE, and the people often overlook the Emirates right next to it, Abu Dhabi. While Abu Dhabi isn't talked about it nearly as often, they're just as well off if not more well off. And one of their biggest flexes is their extremely wealthy sovereign wealth fund. Abu Dhabi's wealth fund currently manages $697 billion. This isn't quite the biggest in the world, as there's 3 countries with even larger funds. However, the thing to note is that their countries with larger funds have significantly larger populations as well. The most recent population numbers from Abu Dhabi indicate that there's 1.54 million residents in the city. If we divide $697 billion by 1.54 million people, we get a whopping $152,597 per person. But it gets even better than that. You see, while all residents of the Emirates directly or indirectly benefit from the Sovereign Wealth Fund, the fund is primarily meant for Abu Dhabi citizens. And as we know, most of the people in the UAE aren't actually citizens. It's estimated that only 11.48% of the US population are nationals of the country, while 88.52% are expats. This number is likely skewed by Dubai. But even if we assume that 20% of Abu Dhabi residents are nationals, we only get 308,000 people. And if we divide $697 billion by 308,000 people, we get a call at $2.262 million per citizen. To put that in perspective, if we divide Social Security as $2.852 trillion in assets by the 291 million citizens in the country, we get $9,774 per citizen. But before you try to move to Abu Dhabi, unless you're from a neighboring country, you won't be able to wriggle yourself in anytime soon. The UAE has extremely strict citizenship policies, and you'll need to live in the UAE for at least 30 years to even apply. So while you and I probably can't benefit from this, it's insane to see how well off with average citizens really are. Just 100 years ago though, Abu Dhabi was a no-name country that was filled with nomads who were just trying to fight for daily survival. So here's how the average Abu Dhabi national went from being nomads to being multimillionaires within just a few generations. Taking a look back, this story of Abu Dhabi only dates back to 1761. Before 1761 there is no records of human civilization in the town specifically, which makes sense given that the area was just a desert, which is extremely difficult to inhabit without the help of modern technology. Nonetheless, a few tribesmen from the Al Bufala Grand decided to set up a small town in Abu Dhabi in 1761. Originally, the area was called a mill, which means salt in Arabic. One of the driving factors of the early Abu Dhabi economy was pearl diving. The tribesmen would trade these pearls with the Iranians and the Indians. This provided them with enough capital to sustain a small civilization. But Abu Dhabi's population never exceeded a few 1,000 people. In fact, even at the start of 1900, Abu Dhabi only had a total of 6,000 residents. Despite the small population of Abu Dhabi would soon struggle to even support these residents. You see it throughout the early 1900s. Japan's printing industry would take off, which led to Abu Dhabi losing most of their customers. To make things worse, the Great Depression would hit in 1929, which wiped out the few remaining customers without Etihad. In desperation, residents diverted their focus onto camel herding and the production of dates and vegetables. But things were quite rough. Most residents lived in huts built from palm leaves while wealthier residents lived in mud brick homes. But soon enough, the country would get a glimpse of hope. On March 3, 1938, Saudi Arabia would not only discover oil, but one of the largest oil reserves in the world. Abu Dhabi's ruler at the time at Sheikh Shak, but would instantly authorize foreign companies to come in and start looking for oil in 1949. But this turned out to be an extremely long process. You see here World War II would really pick up steam in the first half of the 1940s, which put all exploration on hold. Even after World War II, the search for oil was rather difficult due to the large sand dunes and sandstorms all across Abu Dhabi. Also, the oil companies were likely not that motivated to find oil in Abu Dhabi. After all, Abu Dhabi was a rather small area and they had already found an ocean of oil in Saudi Arabia. So they had little need to find oil in Abu Dhabi. IBM as well. Nonetheless, they kept looking, and the first time of discovery would come in 1951. Light traces of oil and gas would be discovered at the Mervin No. 1 well, at a depth of 10,000 feet. Engineers would enthusiastically continue drilling deeper, but at 12,500 feet it would make an unpleasant discovery: tower gas. Sour gas is a natural gas that's extremely poisonous and flammable. One petroleum engineer would unfortunately be killed when sour gas burst out from the pipes. For obvious reasons, drilling at the site was halted, but the search for oil was not. And eventually, in 1958, Abu Dhabi would have finally discovered oil at the Arms Shah field nearly 20 years after the search had begun. Well, Abu Dhabi has dropped oil. Oil money didn't change the emirate all that much. You see, it Sheikh shot, but he was extremely cautious of spending the oil money because he didn't know how long it would last. It took 19 years to find a viable oil field. And if this field ran dry, it could take another 19 years or even more to find another. So while Sheikh Shack, but spent some of the money on concrete buildings and paved roads, he saved the vast majority of it. But as years passed, and Abu Dhabi was able to negotiate better profit-sharing agreements, much of the government and the people felt that Sheikh Shack but could be less frugal. These tensions would eventually blow over in 1966 when Sheikh Shack but was basically forced to retire and replaced by his brother Saeed. Unlike Sheikh Shack, but Sheikh's, Ziad was extremely optimistic and felt that money could revolutionize Abu Dhabi forever, but he decided to start simple and establish the basic necessities of a city. He went ahead and started building a road network that connected the center of the city with the various villages around the city. He also built a sea wall on the north side of the city, which protected his city from future damage from the ocean. He followed up these constructions with electricity, running water and a central sewage system. Once the necessities were covered, he shifted his focus onto building modern government buildings and hotels and housing projects. Around the same time, Britain would also leave the Persian Gulf, which allowed for the UAE to gain political independence too, and after Abu Dhabi would be made a provisional capital of the UAE, which made checks if the president of the entire country. Within just 10 years, Abu Dhabi went from being a city of nomads to gaining independence and rapidly industrializing. But Sheikh Zayed was careful not to let this progress get to his head. Sheikh Zayed, he was well aware that the oil money could stop at any point, and that eventually, the world would move towards more sustainable forms of energy. So he started investing excess oil revenue as soon as possible. Initially, in 1967, he created the Financial Investments Board, which was responsible for investing the excess oil revenue. This was quite an ambitious move for the time. You see, back then, and even now, countries mainly invest their money into gold and bonds. So to create an investing body that would make investments outside these categories was quite unique. This investing body didn't last long, though. Sheikh Zayed soon realized that for such a system to truly be effective, it had to be distanced from the government as much as possible. So in 1976, Sheikh Zayed founded a new organization called the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, or the ADA. As you would guess, he transferred the responsibility of investing excess oil revenue over to them. And this marks the beginning of Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund. Ever since the fund was founded, the app is fully invested into basically everything you can think of. This includes equities, fixed income treasuries, real estate, private equity and hedge funds. Abu Dhabi doesn't release a full report of all of their holdings like Norway, but they do believe as a breakdown of the categories in which they're invested. Taking a look at the breakdown, we can see that their biggest investment isn't developed equities, where they hold between 32 and 42% of their money. They also hold a decent amount in emerging market equities and government bonds. The smallest category, however, is small-cap equities, where they only invest 1 to 5% of their money. As you can see, the audience holdings are pretty well diversified, and Edward risky investments as much as possible, but things don't always go their way. Over the decades, they've made a handful of painful mistakes that have cost them hundreds of millions, and sometimes even billions. One of these mistakes was getting involved in the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, or the BCCI. In the 1980s, the BCCI was the 7th largest private bank in the world with over $20 billion in assets.